Eraserhead. Is he broken or nah?
Well, I mean, that's gonna be a very dependent question. It's always gonna be dependent on the meta, but as it stands right now, I'm gonna go with nah.
I'm gonna go with nah.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of a trick question, but to really get into the meat of this question, we have to turn back the clock. We have to go a little bit back in time to. Actually, I want to go all the way back in time. I want to go all the way back in time to where I didn't even know how to play this game, to where I didn't even know how to play this game, and to where we were just looking at card reveals and thinking, man, these cards just look so cool. And I remember when Eraserhead got revealed, pretty much every actual Universus player that I know was like, yo man, this character's gonna get banned in like a week. And I was like, yeah, turning off your opponent's character in any card game seems is always a pretty. It's a very volatile. It's a very volatile line to balance on.
Yeah.
So I was pretty inclined to agree with them. And then the set dropped, and people started playing him. When those first few weeks that set one was out, I feel like Eraserhead was very much that that boogeyman in the closet that it felt like no one had really figured out yet, and no one was really talking about it, but we all kind of knew. This guy was like mad busted, and it was just only a matter of time before we all kind of figured it out. But that was very much like the unsaid unspoken truth, right? That this guy was just gonna destroy everything. And then time passed, and none of that ever really came to fruition.
Yeah.
Now I do think a lot of that can be attributed though to the meta, because when I did, even as a very new player, when I did play against this character, and when I did play as this character, I definitely felt how powerful he was, right?
Absolutely.
The man is, to break it down, right? The man is a 9-hander with global +2 or -2 speed on everything, who can infinitely recur, +1 mid-breaker blocks, and then sometimes, when he needs to, your character doesn't exist. And then if he does need to do that, you just -1 hand size for however many times he needs to do that, right?
Yep.
But otherwise, he's getting all of that on a silver platter, right? It's all just free, and he's got Void, which is one of the best symbols in the game.
Absolutely.
Also, his infinitely recurable, on-demand, 1 mid, breaker 1 block can also on-demand seal anything anytime he wants.
Mm-hmm. He has so much going on in himself and Erase. And even some of his foundations really go with this. But I think the first major weakness we really need to talk about is the fact that his attacks almost have a negative synergy with him. He wants to combo out these long strings of attacks based on the printed text on these attacks. And that's not something that you always get to do when you're having to play a control game. Your focus is on preventing your opponent from getting to play the game, and when your attacks in your kit say, play 10 of me, but your face says, play 1 or 2, you really don't have a whole lot going on in your own kit that makes you very strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can agree with that, which is kind of what led to the advent of him playing all the Ida kicks, right? The kick package in general, which got a huge boost once we got the DLC kick and the plus Ultra Pack kick.
Yep.
So then it's like, okay, well now maybe it kind of feels like Eraser can finally come around because he's got this nutty attack package that feels like handmade for him, practically. So then it was like, what's still holding him back? Well, really, at that point in time, it was more of a Kirishima thing, right? Because Kirishima was this monster that kind of had to burst down really fast, really early, or not. You couldn't really play a long game against him, and unless you just planned to be able to erase him on every single attack, you were just never denying Kirishima his value that he wanted to ascertain from a long game state, because he just ramps too hard.
Yep.
So it was really just kind of a bad. It was just kind of a bad meta for Eraser, right?
Yeah.
But Kirishima is gone now. So what does the world look like now, right? Without him. Well, now we're kind of just in this super crazy aggro meta, which you would think a defensive control character would be really good in, but it's kind of the exact opposite, because the thing about Eraser is his value. His value is very, it's very much based on what character he's fighting, right? And the majority of those really good characters right now, especially the air ones, he just doesn't do a lot. He doesn't do a lot against Ochako 1, right? You can stop her enhance at like a semi-relevant time, but it's always going to happen at some point, and you can't stop her response. You can only stop Jiro's enhances. You can't stop any of her responses. Denki you have like some stock in, but I mean, as we saw, right, if Denki gets to do his thing, even the full control of Eraser is only so powerful against it. Suyu, you just don't do a whole lot. You stop her from doing it on one attack once again, and then that's speaking aggressively and defensively. And then Tokoyami, you can stop him grabbing Dark Shadow on this attack, but what about the next one, right? So it's just kind of like the meta that we've seemed to fallen into, and then the characters that he is good against, stuff like All Might 3,
Nomu,
stuff like Nomu. Yeah, these are just characters that have started to see just a lot less prevalence in the meta. So Eraserhead stock has really just been going down and down and down and down. We've also seen the advent of a lot of throw decks and a lot of decks that can loop their throws and recur them. And his only answer to that is Villains Defeated. Which, don't get me wrong, Villains Defeated is a fantastic card, but it's hard to keep up. It's still just really, really hard to keep up, especially when a lot of decks can play around stuff like that. He's got Night Watches, he's got Fulfilled Duties, he's got Villains Defeated, but well-timed jolts and shock treatments and things like that can always get around stuff like that.
Absolutely. And the thing that's of note with the way that we've been speaking so far, it's almost like he only has one symbol. And that leads to a level of predictability that is unhealthy for a character who needs to control things.
Yeah. He also, being basically only on the Void symbol, like, as much as Hiroshima leaving did help him, he also lost coordinated effort.
Yep.
Like, he did lose coordinated effort, which meant, like, his coordinated effort, hardened jab, hardened frenzy, like, just those good stuff, Void shenanigans that, like, the game state that coordinated brought on ushered in, he did lose those. Like, he did totally lose those, right? So we're just not really able to see, he's not able to play, like, as much, like, value cards anymore, right? He does have to play, like, again, he's got his kick package, and it is all fine and dandy, but at the end of the day, coordinated jab was just, like, a crazy set of cards that he just doesn't have access to anymore.
Absolutely.
And again, that being, like, other characters were able to pivot towards other symbols. He wasn't able to do that as easily.
Yeah.
Because all Eraser is just, like, you can make, like, Staff Strike Eraser, but it's very jank. You can make a Death Eraser deck, and, like, it's very playable. I mean, we've made it, right?
Yep.
It's very playable, but it definitely goes against it goes against what he wants to actually do, right?
Yep.
It's this very, like, aggro explosive attack package that he doesn't really prop up very well, aside from just, hey, everything gets 2 speed and I can turn on the Binding Cloth capture.
Yeah.
That's all he really offers to the build.
Yeah.
And it's good.
He's built in such a way, like, 7-hander tells you that you want to play aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is what generally a lot of our 7-hand characters want to do. And the fact that you're able to give plus or minus speed gives you both offensive and defensive flexibility, but the offensive options available to him don't really unlock that kill potential the way that he really needs to in order to close out games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, the thing about 7-handers, right, is yes, like, they get to see all their cards they want for, like, huge aggro turns, or they get to be the perfect defensive characters because they just have more blocks, right? You have more cards, you can block better, right, to protect your squishy health, right? But the thing about Eraser is he's not, like, a perfect defensive deck. He is a control deck. And at the moment, all of the aggro characters in the meta are just not very controllable. Like, your Erase just does not see enough value. And, like, yes, the rest of your card is good. Like, again, deleting the opponent's character aside, he does just, he gets to go through 9 cards. He gets to +2, -2 everything. He gets to seal stuff. He gets to breaker you, on his mid blocks. And, like, all of that is good. But, like, eventually, the air decks are just going to tear all of the air decks are just going to tear through all of that, right? They are just going to eat through your 19 health and your half blocks eventually, right? And, like, if you can't really, like, respond enough to kill them, it's a really hard game state for him to facilitate.
And being a 19 health character means that you don't get the luxury of half blocking that often.
No, you don't. You don't. So like the value of you infinitely recurring this erase is like, well, that's only as good as many tapes as I have on the board, right? Which, don't get me wrong, is good, but eventually that seam is going to go out. And when you're trying to play this super, super drawn out long game, it's just not extremely accessible, right? Like you only have so many options available to you. You know, you don't have all of these cool, you don't have a super, super wide defensive package that props up a 19 health character that wants to play the game forever.
Another factor in Eraserhead's lack of tops. And that is the fact that he wants to play this super long game is really tough in a best 2 out of 3 1-hour time format. I actually think the biggest flaw to Eraser is nothing to do with him or his kit or the deck. It is just the format and the rule set that we live in. And I've played him in a tournament. It is exhausting to play this character for 8 rounds that are an hour, where most of the time you're only getting through a game and a half.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because if you like commit to that long game one, you get 45 minutes in, and then something happens and you lose, like you're not going to get a game 2 now.
Yep.
Like you're not going to get a full game 2. It's just not going to happen. And I think that's another reason why, like we're seeing stuff like Ochakas and Denkis and Frappies and Tokoyami is just a lot more prevalent, especially in the big events, right? Like I can go to local, I can bring Eraserhead to locals, right? And like sweat and beat people up all day.
Yep.
When it comes to like one of those big events, it is a really, really hard pill to swallow to be like, okay, I'm gonna destroy my brain playing this guy for like 14 hours, right? It's just like so much dedication to, and you have to really understand how to play within time and with time. And I think that's also kind of one of the reasons that we just don't see Eraserhead in a lot of the big events, because like everything is there, right? It all makes sense, right? Like it makes sense because he sits there and he says, hey, these are the words on my card, read them, they're very good. Here is my deck, here are all the cards. It makes sense that he's that good. Nothing I read about the character says I am not actually that insane on paper. But then where is he in the events, right? Where is he in the events? And that's just like a really, it is a mixture of things, right? It is the meta that kind of facilitates a game state he does not play well in. It is the fact that playing him within time and with time within events over a long day is a big thing to commit to, and it's also very hard. He is a very, very squishy character that has so many decisions to make and so much available to him that he's incredibly difficult to play, especially over a very, very long period of time. Like he's just really, really hard to play. 7-handers that don't want to die are very hard to play.
Yeah.
7-handers that don't want to die are extremely difficult to play.
And playing something that is difficult to play is a big factor in that time element. It takes time to make these decisions, and when every decision matters so much, it adds up over the course of a round. And unless you are an incredibly skilled player, or you just make those snap judgments and trust your gut, time is going to work against you. And the character has so much going for him, but he also has a lot working against him in that way. But very strong and very weak matchups.
Yeah.
Very, very far on the ends of the spectrum, and there's very little that sits in the middle ground for him. He either absolutely beats up on you or gets beat up on.
Yeah. Like, I as a Eraserhead, I don't want to go up against Jiro. I don't want to go up against Jiro. I don't want to go up against Ochako 1. I don't want to go up against Tokoyami.
Or Sue.
Like, I don't want to go up against Sue. Like, these characters can just beat me up.
Yeah.
I just don't think that his control tools can really do much against those characters.
And it's not even like that his tools don't do enough. It's that the margin for error against those characters is so much smaller than it is against something like a Nomu or an All Might 3.
Yeah. Like, if you mess up against Sue once, you're going to take like 10.
Or more.
Or more. Yeah, like, it's very hard. It's very hard. And then, like, I'm not saying that he can't work himself through those matchups, but it's very, very hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, really, really difficult to play those matchups perfectly.
And I think there also needs to be a bit of a caveat here. Like we are kind of looking at this from the perspective of your average player, not someone who is a consistent top 8 contender at every event that they go to. It's like this is more of an overall discussion of this character in the average hands, not in the best case scenarios.
Yeah, like if let's say that I have 1 million IQ and I'm a robot with the inability to become tired, fatigued, or exhausted in the mental capacity whatsoever, I'm gonna play Eraser all day, right? But that's just a lot. It's only Chads can top with Eraserhead.
It takes a lot out of you to play Eraserhead. I can say that from experience. And I play jank builds of Eraser, but it's because there are some tools that he has available in other symbols that are very good, but I still can't say with any level of confidence that Death or All hold a candle before.
I mean, yes, every character in the game is susceptible to like Juro or Chaco aggro on the early turns. Like, yeah, of course, but not every character has 19 health. Like, not every character going up against them has that small health pool. Has like, I mean, he has some defensive options, but also like a lot of the characters that can escape just getting like immediately blown out by him can also like guarantee killing them on the backswing, right? Like if I'm a Eraserhead and like Ochako or Jiro or something like, you know, almost, you know, kill me turn 1 or something like that, and I barely survive, and then I come back, what do I really do from there on out, right? Like it's not like I'm something really, really hard aggro back that can, it's hard to stabilize from that point on. And it's even harder to get to a point where you can eventually turn the game scene around and win.
Yeah, it's definitely very difficult. But yeah, let's talk more about the future of Eraser, because I do think that is something that we need to talk about and address. The Blood Curdle problem.
Yeah, Blood Curdle is probably like the number one thing that I think comes into the Eraserhead discussion, because Blood Curdle is a card that says, hey, Eraserhead gets that card right under Void, but at the same time, if my opponent Blood Curdles me as Eraserhead, I think I just go splat.
Yeah,
like I actually just die.
Your primary defensive tool requires you to be ready, and that, like, somebody tapping you down with a card that you do not have an in-kit way to cancel is a big blow.
Yeah, 1,000%. If you Blood Curdle Eraser, he is just pretty much dead. Like, not having access to your defensive options, like your -2 speed on everything and grabbing your erases, like without having that, like any reasonable deck can kind of just Blood Curdle you and kill you.
It completely warps how you play the game.
Yeah, and it basically says if you're going to go into an event with Eraser, you have to be ready to say, okay, am I fighting a Blood Curdle symbol? I need a character in my sideboard that I can very comfortably side into and play a completely different game against these decks. Because Blood Curdle is just such a silver bullet to my character, right?
And it's a thing that you're not gonna have to worry about it every game, but you do have to respect it.
Yeah, you have to respect it every game, and that's kind of the really, really, really important part about it. Which is fine. Like, he can definitely respect it, but you have to be ready to answer it, and that just piles more stress onto the situation of playing Eraserhead into this meta game. Yeah, I agree. I agree that he's still top 3 character.
Absolutely.
I 100% agree he's still top 3 character. This discussion, like, all of the things I'm saying right now are things that have been in my head for a long time, and definitely before I made my tier list video. I definitely think that Eraserhead is still, like, just on paper, one of the best characters. Easily top 3. I mean, he's in my top 3, right? he's in my top 3 if you've seen my list, right? And I think he's still insane.
I don't think that there is anything in set 2 that makes him irrelevant.
What happens when you can just, like, erase Hatsume Mei for, like, her first couple attacks? She doesn't get to draw all of her cards, you know? What happens when you erase Tetsu, right? And he just, like, doesn't do anything? You know,
you got yourself down to no cards in hand. It'd be a shame if you didn't have card text.
yeah, I think Eraserhead gains a lot of pretty favorable matchups going into set 2, and then also like what new things are going to come into the metagame to be like super relevant that Eraserhead may or may not be good against, because that is kind of like the crutch of the character, right? But yeah, I just kind of wanted to just like talk about like the history of the character, where he's been, where he's at, and where he will be, and kind of like what's going on with all of that, right? Because like I said, I feel like there's been a lot of confusion around it for a very long time, just because he was touted to be so scary, then just never really showed up, and now he's kind of just that he's that wind in the willows now, right? He's just kind of that thing that everyone talks about, but no one's really sure like where he stands. Aside from the only people really sure of that are the people who have actually personally extensively played them. They understand the character and why he is where he is now. But I think a lot of people just see his text and it's like, well, why isn't this guy just like, you know, crazy, right? Yeah. And I think it's kind of was just a really, really interesting discussion that I wanted to have, especially with Will, my resident Eraser player. But yeah, that was just kind of a fun, just kind of an interesting little discussion that I wanted to have, because I feel like it's a topic not a lot of people are really talking about, and I kind of wanted to just see where the greater community stood on it, and just kind of also put my thoughts out there on where we stand on it as well, as people who have a lot of experience with the character. You have any final thoughts on Daddy Eraser?
I think he actually has a whole lot of legs in the meta. I think he's still gonna get played on Void a whole lot. But with set 2 coming, I think the other two symbols have builds that can actually be viable. I think all weapon string might actually be okay.
So what you're saying is zero gravity barrier Eraser.
Oh yeah. It's gonna be gross.
I mean, you can
Get that away from me.
You can make it an 8 low for 3.
Uh-huh.
That's going into my momentum, baby. That's going into my momentum, baby.
I think we need to stop this discussion now before we get ideas in people's heads.
Yeah, dude, we're gonna get a little crazy. We can't spoil the fun Eraserhead deck profiles that are coming in set 2. Yes, rest assured, we are not giving up on the man, no doubt. We still are very, very big fans of this man, and you're gonna see a lot more of him going forward. I just wanted to put our thoughts out there on where he stands right now and kind of why he is where he is and where he will be. But thank y'all for watching, and we are going to see you guys in the next video. Peace out.